Hello and welcome. My name is Mark the Burgomaster. I'm the Regional Vice President for the Western Region of NYSCOPBA, New York State Correctional Officers and Police Benevolent Association. I'm here today with members of the Executive Board from across the state of NYSCOPBA, NYSCOPBA local officials from Auburn, members of the Cayuga County Sheriff's Department and Corrections Department, local and state officials. We're here today to discuss the continued trend of violence we're seeing across the state, but particularly inside Auburn Correctional Facility. Approximately 10 days ago, Sunday, August 8th, the facility was placed into lockdown after a series of violent incidents involving unprovoked attacks on correction officers by an incarcerated individual. This officer was brutally attacked by an individual who was serving a life sentence, where the officer suffered a 7-inch gash from the corner of his mouth to the back of his ear. He required 30 stitches to close the wound. The image of this injury is horrific. Besides the physical injury itself, this officer will carry the emotional scar of this attack with him for the rest of his life. Every time he looks in the mirror, he'll be reminded of the events that changed his life. At this moment, I would like to call up Assemblyman Lamondez for a few words.
Thank you. My remarks will be brief, and I just want to say, ladies and gentlemen of New York State police and correction officers, and all of law enforcement, as well as other elected officials, I appreciate the opportunity to address you today on this topic of public safety. As you have heard, and as we all know, in light of recent legislation that has passed, our jails and prisons have become more dangerous places. 2 officers from this facility just last week will forever bear the scars of duty. We owe them the tools, training, and resources to work on all of our behalf safely. Anything short of that should, in and of itself, be a crime. They go into harm's way every day for us. Just as an example, New York City alone, overall crime index is up 22% over last year. Murder alone increased 47% when comparing 2019 to 2020. Comparing the number of people shot thus far this year in comparison to last year, 227 versus 160. That's a 47% increase. These are not good indicators of public policy that is working. Without their daily commitment, our police officers, corrections officers, and law enforcement community to serve and protect the rest of us, we can't live in peace. There's no other way around that. The reason we have these facilities is to keep our society safe and orderly from the criminal elements of our population. The prisoners have more freedoms than ever before, which often compounds the difficulty of the officers to protect them from each other, themselves, the corrections officers, and all of us. The rehabilitative regimen and trades available are second to none. Everything the inmates need to start over cleanly, if they want, is available to them. Without the commitment to duty, self-sacrifice, willingness to go into harm's way every day that our corrections officers and police officers live by, the rest of us are not safe. Please don't take them for granted. The epic betrayal of the entire law enforcement community cannot be forgotten, as it has endangered your lives as well as those of the inmates through the disastrous consolidation and closures of prisons throughout the state. Additionally, retaining qualified officers as well as being able to recruit the next generation of officers has been terribly negatively impacted. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a solemn obligation to enable those who serve and protect us to be able to do their jobs safely. Let's not forget that. Thank you for allowing me to address you on this topic today. Thank you all.
Just want to touch on some of the state failures and the numbers. The violence seen inside the walls are not unique to Auburn Correctional Facility. It's across New York State. Just within the region I represent, the Western region, Auburn Correctional Facility has been a hotbed of violence in the past few months. Large fights, attacks on staff, dozens of officers sent to the hospital for treatment. Attica has seen its fair share of violence. Collins Correctional Facility has been numerously reporting violent activity within their medium setting. And with the impending implementation of the HALT legislation passed earlier this year, which aims to water down the discipline system even further, these dangerous predators will thrive in a consequence-free environment. Our federal lawsuit filed in May seeks to end HALT until the rise in violence is studied and addressed. The state has proudly touted the reduction in the number of correctional facilities to right size. The system has incarcerated population has significantly declined. While the ideal looks great in a press release, the reality is it only compacts the more violent incarcerated individuals into tighter quarters and closer to their prey. Additionally, inmate-friendly legislation has restricted and rendered the proven disciplinary system to nothing more than a slap on the wrist. Yet state officials are appalled at the rising trend of violence in our facility. The numbers simply speak for themselves. Despite an incarcerated population decline from 55,000 in 2012 to 34,000 in 2020, violence incidents against staff have doubled from 524 in 2012 to over 1,034 in 2020. And a disturbing trend continues this year. Even as the inmate population dipped to its lowest numbers in decades, as of last week, 644 violent attacks on staff. That number is on pace to set a record for this calendar year. Again, with even a smaller inmate population. As correction officers, we accept the risks of our profession, and we are trained in every aspect of our jobs we perform. Unfortunately, over the past decade, the state has steadily made the job more difficult and dangerous, and the numbers are directly reflected on of the policies and decisions and legislation by the majority. On top of all the violence, the state has approved the implementation of new programs that require more staff, yet fail to adequately staff all the facilities. Enough's enough. How many more officers need to be victimized before the state wakes up? The numbers tell the truth. 2021 aims to set a record of violent assaults on staff and inmate population that hasn't been seen in decades. Auburn Correctional continues to see violence on staff day after day after day. As of yesterday, another incident that involved more violence in the mess hall, on the 3 to 11 shift. More and more incidences are occurring even now as they try to come out of a lockdown. Tensions are high inside. The inmates know they have the upper hand. We feel as though we don't have the backing of the state, nor do we support the current administration besides the standard line, these attacks on staff will not be tolerated. They continue to happen and there is no response. It just doesn't make sense as to why the state would continue down this road. We all see where it's headed. We are repeating history. We have not learned from our past. My members have done their part. We signed up for this job. We honor our commitment to protect New Yorkers from the dangerous individuals that reside inside these prison walls. It's time for the state to honor their end of the bargain and pass common sense policies that protect the brave men and women of NYSCOPBA from these vicious attacks. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. We don't have the official number from the department yet, but I can report to you that they had more than 24 use of forces during the lockdown period to try and get the cells frisked for contraband. They recovered over 24 types of weapons from cells, and some of these weapons are quite horrifying. And as fast as we get the weapons out of their cells, they're already making new ones right back in them. And just as of last Thursday, even though the cells had been frisked, we had another officer stabbed. He was stabbed through the hand, again, by an inmate that was able to take a broomstick, break it, and sharpen it. They are creative, and they will create weapons out of anything they can get their hands on. That's the constant battle we have inside these walls.
How many of your members have been hurt in this recent threat of violence here?
I don't have the exact number from the facility as of yet, but there's several dozen that were injured, had to seek medical treatment. Obviously, some more severe than others. I do know in the opening days we had, just in one day, there were several use of forces. We had people that had blood exposures that had to be treated for that. We've had other injuries, fractured hands, bones. This is not normal. We have never seen this type of violence in our correctional facilities at this level. They have no fear of any discipline at this point. Well, Governor Hochul-elect, or whatever her title is at this current moment, she's been involved in this process. She's been the lieutenant governor throughout the majority of these changes, and she's been involved in the system. This isn't new to her. We're hoping to establish communications with her, try to get her to look at seeing if we can roll back some of the previous decisions made to get smart, common sense looking at this. What we're dealing with now is a repeat. All right, this is a backslide for us. They're putting our safety, our members' safety, everybody who works in these walls, not just the officers, sergeants, it's lieutenants, it's civilians, it's anybody who walks in these walls is at risk. We represent the officers and sergeants inside these walls, but we ensure everybody goes home that comes in those gates. We can't do that right now, and I'm sad to say we can't. Our hands are tied. You're welcome.